catch up from where we left off last week. Okay, welcome everybody to our second prep session, August 14th. We were just discussing a little bit about some timing conflicts, and we will be looking at the schedule for these calls to see if we can move them to a different time slot than Wednesdays at 2 o'clock so that we can pick up more of our EHR constituency that we miss who hasn't been able to attend in the past couple of weeks. I'm going to do, I forgot to fill out the rest of my agenda slides. Sorry, I promised there are more slides than this. I was going to do a brief recap just because we only had a few people participating in our first meeting last week to take you back through the introduction of what we're aiming to do. And then we will move on to today's agenda, which is to talk about the work that we want to do around clinical notes and representation of care teams and care team members. That's what today's prep session will really be focused on. Just as a recap, last week was our first prep session, and we did some work to cover a bunch of resources that I've been gathering together, and we talked about where things will be posted on the Confluence site and in Dropbox, where I've got some resources that are building up. We're trying to now have much more of a, I'll call it like a library point of view about how the Implementation-A-Thon is working and being collected. And we're starting to have a very nice space set up over prior Implementation-A-Thons so that as you get exposed to these experiences, you can easily go back and draw from previous learnings and exercises and samples that are generated, et cetera, et cetera. So as we're getting better at collecting the tail that's coming behind us, we're trying to do a better job of building out the Google Docs area and the Dropbox area where all of these resources get gathered together, just because it becomes a nice resource place that you can remember and go back to if you are trying to recollect something that we did as an exercise or something that you were exposed to at the Implementation-A-Thon. So the Dropbox area right now that we have for this most recent one, we've already started to gather a lot of nice resources that people can use and get access back to. This is also where all of the sample files that we'll be looking at and the example scenarios that we'll be using are posted here in this area. So you might want to pull down the PowerPoint presentation from last prep session or this prep session, and then you can you can get to all of those links and practice with them. The prep session does have a recording too, so for folks who do miss it, I have been capturing these in GoToMeeting, and I post the recording right here and the slides right there. So as we go through this process, this will build up as well.
I tried accessing the recording this morning and I got a PDF.
You got a PDF instead of the recording.
Oh, maybe. No, that's what I got.
Oh, that does look like the slide. You're right. I think I might have put the wrong link there. Let's see if the slides bring up nope, the slides bring up that too. Okay, thank you, George. I'll check and see what I did wrong about posting the recording. Thank you. Okay, I did. It's up on YouTube, so I know it's there, and I checked it when I loaded it last time. So I just have to get the right link into Confluence. Zulip is the chat area where people ask questions. I know Linda's my best chatter. I don't think that it has a lot of attention yet on a regular basis. The C-CDA community doesn't spend a lot of time out there, but as folks get more accustomed to the way the FHIR community works with each other, Zulip becomes a really nice channel for reaching out, asking questions, confirming things that are going on. And you will notice if you go out to the stream that I have posted a couple of SurveyMonkey surveys just to get some dialogue going around workflows that people are using for content creation and content consumption. I have quite a few people who did the first survey that came out maybe a couple of months ago about content creator capabilities, but the most recent one on content consumption, I don't think anybody's answered that one yet. And so if you, sorry, up here, if you could try, check out the SurveyMonkey survey. It's under 10 questions. It doesn't take very long to fill it out, but we're trying to get a good feel of who has systems that are able to consume CDA documents right now. So Zulip is out here, and the Atlanta September 2019 has its own stream already. We also went over the sort of the background behind. I put some resources to folks who are interested in C-CDA on FHIR and mapping between CDA and FHIR. It's not as much of a priority for us during this working session because this work group, this particular track that we're running, we're trying to sync up with all the work that's been done on US CDI and really make sure that our large community is aligned and getting more consistent in the way that we are sharing and representing information that's identified in the US CDI. For that reason, we're going to shift the way we do the track so that we merge together the two sessions in the middle of the day to get a larger block of time where we will be doing these exercises and looking across documents of the same type from the same scenario and trying to see how, compare how result section and result entries are versus in other documents, looking across the problem section, looking across the medication section, and see if we can try to understand how to do a better job of sharing this data in a more consistent way. Our focus also is going to be on encounter documents, not on CCDs. So in the past, I think the past 5 Connect-a-thons, mostly it's been a focus on a single kind of C-CDA document. And in the wild today, that's mostly all that you see exchanged. But we're really trying to change that. And so the Implementation-A-Thon will be encouraging and really trying to raise the bar on more vendors able to consistently produce encounter summary documents that are discharge summary, referral note, progress note, etc. And we will be trying to get aligned on our notions of provenance and what are the basic sorts of data points that we need in terms of authors and author timestamps to be able to record and share a little bit more of as a basic expectation, some basic provenance information, as well as clinical notes and care team. So we want to work in a way where we'll have more samples. I look back through the Dropbox from the last Implementation-A-Thon, and the amount of samples that we generated, although it was the largest turnout we had, the number of samples that were actually developed and accumulated in the Dropbox was not very high. And so we want to do a better job this time of providing the folder structure and the way for people to be able to provide the samples that they generate and share them with each other. And maybe even be able to generate some possible examples that could go into the examples task force work so that we will have more whole documents and greater variety of samples to beef up the repository of examples we have there. So we want to do that and come away with a deeper understanding of what the industry can really expect in the way of how documents are created and how they are consumed. We've been focused mostly on just looking at the content that's in the document, and it seems like we need to have more understanding of what is the expectation about how these documents make it from one system to another system, because that seems to be one of the blocks that we have for information being able to flow right now. The companion guide that balloted in July is undergoing ballot reconciliation right now, but we will be trying to socialize some of the material that's in there. You know, there's new templates that were defined in the companion guide, and we want to make sure that everybody has a good sense of what they are, how to find them and use them. And then, of course, we'll always have a session around testing and validation and just aligning our expectations on those important aspects of getting it right that have to do with validating documents and making sure that we're all generating things to best practice expectations. We put some information out there about the US CDI for folks who aren't already familiar with this. It's pretty straightforward. Oh, I don't know why that's got an overlay on there, but the document types that we're going to be looking at will exercise all of these different data elements. That's really where we're trying to narrow our focus to, instead of worrying about, I think C-CDA has something like 180 different entry templates, and we're trying to focus everyone on a smaller set so that we can make more progress together. And the red block right here, you'll see, is around 2 areas of the US CDI where there's new templates that have been defined. So we want to help to strengthen everyone to more rapidly be able to know about and generate information according to those new templates. We went over the agenda. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that right now, but what I wanted to do is clear up where we were on encounter documents. I think Linda asked about this last time. Were we going to have access to a tool that helps us understand what's different between a CCD, a patient summary, and some of these encounter summaries? So this C-CD is a medical history, sort of a summary for the patient over the course of a period of time, but all of these other C-CDA documents are about a particular encounter, not so much on transfer summary, but all these ones in the middle here. So we put this matrix together for you, which has all of the sections in C-CDA. They are organized in what I call a SOAP order. You know, the subjective, objective, assessment, and plan sort of strategy that most clinical notes are using today to communicate clinical information between providers. That SOAP note sort of structure is at the foundation of how the original sections were developed for consolidated CDA. And we usually see them in alphabetical order because they're easier to find that way. But sometimes the storytelling power of these documents is better understood when you see the sections organized in more of a SOAP order. So that's how we put this resource together for you. And you can look at the whole thing out here. I think I would be able to, let's see if I can just sneak that into the clipboard for you right now. In case anybody is curious to see the whole thing, I will put that link right here in chat. Doesn't look like it got the whole thing. And then you can take a look at that resource. It's pretty handy. One of the challenges, for example, one of the scenarios that we're going to have for making discharge summary is actually a scenario that we've used once before. It is about a patient hospitalization and inpatient experience, but previously the document that was produced at the end of the hospitalization was a CCD. And so we're using the information that has been recorded in that CCD to look at that and say, now if this scenario were executed at the end of that hospitalization, a discharge summary document were generated, what would that look like? And so as an example, you can see, like, you'd say, well, I know how to make CCDs. How would I make a discharge summary? You can see, for example, that if you already knew how to make the allergy and intolerance section, with entries required for a C-CD, then you're all set because your discharge summary only requires an allergy intolerance section, entries optional. So it makes it really easy to tell where you've got sections and information that you're already generating because of making C-CD documents, and how you translate that to understand what it's like to put forward just the information around a specific encounter. I don't have agreement yet from the EHR vendors because other than Allscripts, I don't think that we have had any other EHR vendors on these prep sessions yet. So we need to figure out a way to be in closer communication here and get agreement around the fact that we would have content creators who are coming to the Implementation-A-Thon ready to demonstrate creating discharge summary, progress note, history and physical note, referral note, and consultation note. We're kind of as a bonus hoping that some people will be able to generate care plans, but as a minimum, we're really looking to be able to focus on these 5 other encounter types. And we need to very rapidly understand if we're going to be able to make it to there. Who's on the phone today? We have George Dixon from Allscripts. George, do you think that Allscripts will be coming prepared to be a content creator of any of these types of encounter summaries?
I think that Emma will probably be there. I'm not sure if I'm going yet. So, yeah, I think that we'll have some representation, but she's also going to be split the fire, so we'll have to work it out. Emma's trying to get in. She says she can't get in. She keeps getting bounced out, something about certificates. So I don't know if there's a issue with GoTo or the link maybe having some bearing. But
for what it's worth, when I tried to use, Lisa, when I tried to actually just use the link in your calendar invite, it did tell me that there was a security concern. I went to launch my GoToMeeting app on my computer, and I typed your meeting number, and that's how I got in. I could not get in with your link.
Oh, okay.
It was basically telling me it was taking me to an unsecure site, and it would not, my computer would not let me in.
Okay. I will try and figure out what's going on with that. George, does your system, Allscripts, do they have the ability to generate all these different encounter summary types? Can you give us a sense of the capabilities in that space? Like, is it possible to just pick what kind of document you'd like to create, or how does that work for your?
Take a discharge summary if it's up for offer, but we can do, I think, all of it.
You can make a progress note. You can make a history and physical.
Yeah, I think we got the history and physical. Progress note, that was my favorite. I mean, I'm sorry, discharge summary is my favorite, but we can always have more than one. Just because my background's acute.
Okay. Dee Dee, from your experience with all of the different vendors that are participating in the Sequoia project, is it a reasonable expectation that we're going to see implementers coming ready to make some of these other types of encounter summaries?
I will answer that based on facts of what I've received. So I've been running a content testing program for eHealth Exchange since February 5th of 2018. Everyone has had to test as of May 6th. We had over 30 different vendor technologies represented in what was submitted in all the documents that were sent in for testing. And these were test data documents. They're not PHI-based documents. But we only received 2 document types in total. One was, the most prevalent was C-CD, so the C-CD document, and then progress note. Those are the only 2 types of documents that we received in testing submissions. And they were supposed to submit a version. So we received C32s, release 1.1s and 2.1s. We were supposed to, receive for each document type and from each document source that they can support. They had to submit a sample for testing, and that's basically what we had was C32s, release 1.1 C-CDs. So we only had C-CDs in the release 1.1, and in 2.1 we got progress notes and C-CDs. And that's it.
So there might be a little bit of an expectation gap, or maybe people are just waiting for Implementation-A-Thon so that they can take the wraps off some of their new progress on being able to make some of these other note types.
Yeah, just so you'll know, to try to not set false expectations, the Care Quality Network, so that testing I just completed was for eHealth Exchange Network. Remember, that's separate. Care Quality is a different network. We have not done any content testing there, so I have no idea what to survey there. But just so you'll know, they've all agreed upon that they will include clinical notes and some other aspects to some of these documents and expand the documents that they support. That's not been, in other words, it's the Commonwealth Care Quality Joint Publication of content. They have not set the date by which everyone must meet those expectations. As soon as that's set, then you'll have a better idea of when all these other document types and sections will be supported.
Great. Well, I'm really hoping that this tool, this might call the rapid visualization of C-CDA documents, it simplifies things so much to be able to just take a quick, easy look at what it really means to be able to make a discharge summary versus a CCD, and how prepared you are, the small incremental extra amount of information that you would need to release and populate is hopefully something that will open people's eyes to see that this is not it's not a huge lift to be able to move from doing CCDs to encounter summaries. So hopefully that will, and I'll work with Dave along with rescheduling this prep session. We need to look at getting commitment from our EHR partners who are going to be at Connect-A-Thon to make sure that we have a good amount of sample documents for the consumers to consume and for observers to learn from. I wanted yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me? This is Emma. I think Meaningful Use may have done a disservice to the encounter document type, because I think when they specifically called out certain document types, people tend to feel like they have to do those in order for certification purposes. So I think on the ambulatory side, inpatient may go to the discharge summary, but on the ambulatory side, a lot of people migrated to CCD because of what Meaningful Use did and what already existed prior to that.
For attestation and counting, so they produced those. Yeah, it's a
Matt, do you have any comments on that? I think Emma's right, but have you heard from other people, Matt, that was a kind of created a barrier now for progress? I don't think he's on the phone. He doesn't appear to be green.
Yeah, I had trouble getting onto the WebEx site. I'm just on the phone myself.
Yeah, we heard. I'm sorry about that. I'll take a look and see what's up with the link. So I wanted to also set people's expectations and ask for a little bit of feedback around this. In IHE, they do a really nice job of spelling out 4 basic levels of what content consumers can do. And the first one is just to be able to view, that you could get a document and it would be viewable. That counts as consuming it. But we have relied on that for the last 5 Implementation-A-Thons, and I feel like it's time to raise the bar and to expect one step higher than that. We would like to actually see systems be able to import the document as the level of consuming it. And right now we just say, oh, just if you can, render it in the style sheet, then you've consumed it. But it doesn't really demonstrate any real competence in terms of being able to exchange information. And so I think that striving to, as a minimum, be able to bring systems and test and bring to Implementation-A-Thon a system that can import the document and attach it to the right patient is the is what we should be aiming for this time. We might not make it, but I think that's what we should be aiming for as a minimum. And then the IHE specs call out the next levels higher than that would be to be able to import information from the section.txt information from a section or some sections, and then the highest level being able to incorporate the discrete data that's encompassed in some of those sections. So the news here is really about raising the bar to come prepared to ingest a document all the way into a system where you can see that this can attach to a patient record. Does that seem like a reasonable expectation, folks on the line? Or do you see any big challenges? Again, sorry to put pressure on you guys from Allscripts, but you're like my only implementer here today in terms of EHR vendors. Do you guys bring a system that can actually do document level import for these sample files?
We can, limited. I mean, nobody's implemented much more than certification required.
The way Allscripts is set up, because we have many different EHRs, so we have a centralized service, for lack of a better word, that takes the extracted data. The products were extracted, send it to this service, and then we transform it and create CDA documents. And we do the same thing on the way back in. So the products will receive a CDA document, call the service deconstruct the data, put it back into an implementable form, in a importable form. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and hands it back to the system, and then the system inserts it into their database. Mm-hmm. So if you want to see it inserted into a database, mm-hmm. then we have to bring a system to be able to do that. Now, a lot of our products, for use certification, people had to import meds, allergies, and problems. So a lot of, products out there that pass certification should be able to do that. Now, what we do also is, because we have a centralized transform layer, service layer, when we export, we also set up the expectations for import. Because our train of thought is, if a system can create that, can export or collect the data and export it, it should be able to get the data back and put it back in. Mm-hmm. But our implementation goes based on what systems are capable of doing. I mean, we don't just do it to be doing it. We do it if they already have the need for it, people want it, that kind of thing.
So it's a question of whether our middle layer, which can absolutely break everything down, to whether or not a system is implemented, is the question.
And it's called the middle layer EHR. We can bring EHR.
Is that a burden, Lisa, like an unexpected burden? Don't you guys bring systems when you are working with the fire implementations?
Yeah, so it's not an unexpected burden, but we just need for them to know way ahead of time. They have to set up resources. Everybody's tight with resources and things like that. Mm-hmm. Okay. So sometimes what we can do ahead of, if we know, to come with the expectation of exporting this data, we can get the systems to create a data, in their test database, of course, not in real life patients. Create the CDA document. When we bring that, they were able to, and if you say input this data, we can show it imported into the system with, so we can come with that kind of
stuff ready to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we can try, but it means getting an environment that we're allowed to use. I have connections, but.
Yeah, Lisa, this is Dee Dee. I can honestly tell you, having, experienced the Fire Connect-A-Thons and having to do this integration for real, that user interface and the expectation of what you want to see. So are you expecting vendor A to be able to show you, okay, here's the CDA rendered, and the provider, physician, clinician, whoever's interacting with the system can say, okay, these allergies, highlight them, I want to keep these, or is there a way to import that? Are you looking for that kind of usability, or are you just waiting, or are you wanting to see a database where the data now exists? So those are two different, knowing the Allscripts as well as I do, because I was an Eclipsys employee at one time, so I know all the EHRs they're talking about, and probably know a lot about the middle layer. But it's one of those things that it depends on what widgets you're needing to interact with. I think that's that's what you need to get to. And FHIR is looking more at a lower level than what you're describing here.
And that was why the virtual, the virtual, I like the virtual implementation. I mean, I didn't like not having the face-to-face interactions, but because we could get more people to participate that way, where it was like, I'm sending it to you, okay, I'm importing it, and they can show you via WebEx or whatever, because the system's already set up. It's already set up. It's just a matter of people logging onto the Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff. And you
don't have the ability to, if you're physically in Atlanta, you wouldn't have the ability to still make use of the system that could have helped you when we were in a virtual implementation-a-thon.
George can, I think. But remember, it's Saturday and Sunday, so getting people to be online and all that kind of stuff.
There's a good chance I can do it and a good chance it'll work. But like Emma said, it's a Saturday, Sunday kind of thing.
All right. Well, I think when we send out the questions about timing, we'll also communicate about this and see if it's an unrealistic expectation. We always can do what we've done in the past, but it seems to me, and to Dee Dee's question, it's not so much that I was expecting to be able to move into this level of section import or data import, but if you look at the expectations around reconciliation for certification, the first step that they ask is for a system to have the ability to simply take the document in and attach that document to the patient's chart, so that if someone opens the patient's chart, they can see that document that has been imported into the system. And I thought that would be the most basic step forward, other than just doing I can view it with the style sheet. That might not be a fair assumption. Okay. Thanks for the feedback, you guys. And Linda, were you trying to say something? I heard another voice in the background. No, maybe not.
We may not have to change the times, but I'll follow up and confirm yes or no.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, Lisa. I had to connect on my phone too, and I couldn't figure out how to unmute. All I was going to say is I totally understand the challenges, because I'm working to see if I can do the same thing. If you can find a way, we work in I don't know how to put it. We don't get to touch real stuff most of the time in our world, and I think that's what Emma and George are too. The whole end-to-end processing, we touch bits and pieces of it.
All right. Well, let's think about it and let's try. I'm interested to see what the challenges are and to hear from more EHR vendors if we can up the way that we test, so that we can have more people who have confidence and exposure to what it is like to see a document get attached to the patient's chart and be available for viewing inside the EHR. That's just a piece that we don't get much visibility into. So it'd be interesting to see what we can accomplish there. All right, 20 minutes left. I'm going to shift gears and just make sure that everybody has the information that they need about these two new sets of templates. I showed you on the US CDI earlier that clinical notes is one of the data classes sort of that's in the set of data elements there. And this is something that Consolidated CDA addressed in our last companion guide. So templates have been developed and they exist, not only obviously to represent an entire document as a clinical note, but within the context of an exchange document, there's also templates that can be used to create just a single notes section where the notes associated with that encounter, for example, could be accumulated in that notes section. Or there are templates that can be used that allow you to record at an entry level a specific clinical note that might be either in the context of that clinical notes, of that notes section, or that note activity could be an entry that is in the context of one of the other standard sections that have already been defined for the structured documents. So this clarity around a document level template that's for a whole clinical note that can be represented as a structured clinical note, or a document where you have all of your narrative notes in a single note section, or down to this level where individual notes can be attached to their appropriate, like for example, this could be a procedure section, and this might be a specific note about a procedure that happened. We want people to be able to be exercising with these templates, and they are all provided in the companion guide. In case you missed it, one companion guide ago, or if you're interested in taking a look at how this is, it was in the most recent ballot, the release 2 of the companion guide, in the chapter that is called, I think it was called Appendix A. And Appendix A has got all of the Appendix A, sorry about that. Appendix A has all of the templates, the new templates that have been added to supplement consolidated CDA. It's got the templates that you need to represent the care teams section, as well as the ones I just went over. Here's your notes section and the note activity. All of these templates, where you find them is in that appendix to the companion guide. So same idea, I want to just do a little bit of a poll around to see who is going to be coming to Connect-a-thon ready to create documents that are using the clinical notes section. George or Emma, do you guys have systems that have already implemented these templates?
Emma, I don't know if the applications have. We can certainly generate documents with them.
I was on mute again. We, in our middle layer, have implemented it, and we got a request for them from the products. So we have to see which one has, what version they've updated to see if they've implemented.
I think Sunrise will be doing it, but not for a few more months.
And so will you just have a notes section, or do you actually have individual note entries within note section or within other structured sections?
We did both. We have a notes section, and then we have notes activity in, I believe, results, reason for referral, and other notes, other templates. Come on, Dan, help me out. Results, what else is it in? Reason for referral.
Section level or entry level?
Entry level. Encounters. What else? It wasn't that far long ago you did it. Yeah, so I can get a list, but we have it in a few other templates.
Excellent.
Procedures, we have it in procedures. And the reason why we have it in procedures, because we had a request where people wanted to actually include their procedure notes.
Excellent.
Yeah, so we added it there as well.
All right, that's great. And I don't think, is anybody else? I don't know, Linda. It's probably not relevant for you. Joe, Joe.
No.
I don't mean to be skipping over your name there, but are you going to be bringing a system that would be creating documents at all?
No, we'd be consuming.
Consuming, okay. And Linda, you're consumers also, right?
That's right.
Okay. So how about on content creation for care team information? Is Allscripts going to be generating either care team section information or putting care team members in these care team organizers?
Can I have that ready? I'm not sure. Emma, are you on mute?
Yeah, I'm sorry. What was it? If
will Allscripts be able to generate any care team examples?
No, because that's new. You know, because we typically tend not to do new things until it comes out in an IG. So as soon as the companion guide go, we can do the text only care team section, but the care team section with entries, it's on our backlog to do when the IG goes through ballot.
Yeah, it's planned. It's just not time yet.
Yeah. Because remember, we have to change the value set.
Yep.
That's why we wait. We wait.
Okay,
I learned that lesson with UDI. We had it actually built, and then it never actually got published for ages. So it's just horrible.
So here's a good question, maybe that everybody can answer. Then, when we have got, I'm going to bounce back to the agenda. If we are allocating a section of time on Q2 and Q3 of Sunday to have the tracks working to generate examples where you would be including clinical notes, including care team information and care team member information. Am I setting us up for failure to expect that we would be able to have stuff to do in this time here? Or is it productive to help people learn and look at? Is it more helpful to maybe have one or two samples where people are looking at even manually created examples and talking about them and learning from them? What can we do with the time?
I think today, then a lot of people may be able to create care teams from participants in the header, but not those sections, not the section and organizing entry things once. So they can probably still do care team and talk about care team, and maybe talk about what the difference is between, the expectation is between the care team elements in the header and the care team elements that are supposed to go in the sections. I think that would be a good way to set expectations or differentiate between the two ways of doing it. And I also think if at the Implementation-A-Thon, it would be helpful to, to have folks like Russ and Claude and the rest of them who talk about care team or, learning health systems to attend for that piece of it, so people can understand that when it's time to map or time to create your sections for the care team section, what, business rules around how that section how and why that section would be needed and gets populated and what situations and things like that from a functional perspective.
So I don't know that the specs are, you know, like even with the templates and stuff in the implementation guide that we have right now, there isn't really any guidance around the business rules on how you populate a person's care team. What would be the options for an EHR? I mean, the EHR would only know who your doctors are in the context of their practice, right? Or would they somehow know other care team members?
In the context of referrals, in the context of ordering, right? In my experience working in EHRs, you know, because you always want continuity of care, consistency in care. So when you go to refer the patient, order a lab, you sort of, you know, like the question they always ask you about, which pharmacy do you go to? You know what I'm saying? Because you consistently go to the same, well, not consistent, but you always people tend to go to the same pharmacy. So they always want to know. And that's the same, if they have to repeat a referral, you know, at least in my personal experience or experiences with my mom, they're like, well, which doctor did she see last time? You know what I'm saying? So if some EHRs collect those historical things and they have a way to keep it, does she still see Dr. So-and-so? Some systems collect them, they call them external providers. We are not providers in their directory, but they're providers that they can be used in referral management or order management and things like that. Which hospital does she prefer, you know, for people who may get something done, you know, like some kind of procedure done more frequently. And then sometimes, too, they store from a payer perspective, who's the preferred provider for this, for the insurance that the person has.
And do you think that Russ and Claude would be prepared to discuss business rules, or do you think they would mostly just answer questions for the audience? How would you see them helping out?
I think Russ would probably be more from a practicing perspective. So these are like functional clinically. What is the expectation here? Not so much of how the system works, but what are some of the things that you need to know? And these are things that we're also working on and as part of the Clinician on Fire use cases.
What about Dave Carlson? You know, the people that are working on the care team resource in Fire. Would he be a good person to share? Because the use cases and expectations are all the same, regardless of whether you're putting the information out in Fire or CDA.
Yeah, he would, and then he works in the VA system. You know, because with veterans, you try to keep them within the VA virtual walls. You know what I mean? Okay. I have a veteran sitting next to me saying no.
Okay. So then with the amount of time that we have, and probably, you know, Allscripts is on the bleeding edge of knowing about these new templates for care team. And so I'm thinking that if we're going to dedicate kind of a 2 quarters to these 3 very new topics around the author, you know, performer, associated time elements there, clinical notes, and care team members, this may be less of a hands-on session and more of a learning and discussion session than I had thought it might have been.
I think so. I think because it's a new section, and what are the expectations from OMC? Because when we talked about care team in the past, it was about care coordinating and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't think Matt has his vocals on. Look, he dropped off because we asked him some tough questions already in the background, but. You know, the ONC has put out the US CDI, and they don't really distinguish the maturity of these different data elements. They think of all of this as being, sort of equally needed, and where we're going with that. And I think that they believe that if they publish this list and they keep this process flowing forward, that the EHR vendors will follow suit and implement so that their systems are covering the information that's in US CDI.
Yeah, and I like this. No, go ahead, Dee.
Go ahead.
No.
This is Dee. The only thing I'll put in there, the elephant that's in the room is, I'll be very honest, and I've heard this from many vendors, all of them are waiting to find out when TSCA drops the final regulation, when the dates will be that they're required to do this. In the draft that was out for public comment earlier this year, those dates were in comment, and a lot of people commented that those dates need to be pushed a bit. So, or in other words, you can read all the comments out there. So I think everyone is waiting for that hat to drop to say, okay, here is the date this has to be done. So everybody's going to make sure they meet that date. But everyone knows they've got at least a year or more to implement this information now. So I think that, I'll be honest, everybody's in a holding pattern that I've spoken to. Because I'm trying to push our implementers as well. So it's just, I hate to say it, but regulation ends up prioritizing their work because they have so many feature function development plans. Every vendor you speak to has so many things on their, bucket list of their customers require this, 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 and this, and they have to prioritize and handle all the wish list items and get them into developed products baked in, rolled out, implemented, and trained on, because all this requires an upgrade of some sort. So all the vendors are in that holding pattern saying, okay, we're going to do a next release with all of this information once we know exactly what the information is and by what date that it needs to be required by.
And the ugly reality is we have no control over when the clients actually will pick them up. And implementation is expensive and it's hard.
Yeah, this is all voluntary right now.
So
this is all voluntary.
Clients that are waiting years to upgrade because they don't have the staff to do it.
Yep. All right. Well, I'll just keep noodling over this to try and figure out how to make sure that we have the right expectations to get the right experience, the best possible win from where we honestly are. We can't, if we go in with the expectation that we think that we're going to get 8 vendors showing up that are creating documents that are using these templates, then we won't make good use of our time. But if we go into the Implementation-A-Thon ready to meet people where they're really at and contribute, provide the kind of dialogue and discussion that helps product managers and engineering managers plan their roadmap, know what they need to do, I think that could be the most effective thing that we could spend our time on.
Yeah, and you definitely need to make sure that during this track times that, obviously you heard from others, that we need to make sure ONC is there to be able to answer questions, because I think there are going to be a lot of questions that come about.
Yep. All right, very good. Okay, we're at the top of the hour. We'll have some logistical things to handle about the calls, and just, FYI, be watching your schedule. We're up against a big challenge next week because of the ONC Interoperability Forum meeting. I think we have some challenges to face there anyway, so I will put my heads together with Dave, and we'll try and figure something out. I was looking for a volunteer who could help me with some workflow questions, maybe somebody with the initials J and L. Joe, that was supposed to make you laugh, to see if I could get a little bit of your time to look at some of the plans that we have for these workflow scenarios for consumption and creation. Is that something you'd be willing to do a call with me about, so we could put our heads together on how to create a possibility for the Implementation-A-Thon on that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I laughed. I was just on mute.
Oh, good. Good. So I'll be back in touch about that, and we'll keep you posted on what we're going to do to handle the scheduling changes and the ONC Interoperability Forum next week. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Lisa, I
Yes?
don't think you have a problem with your meeting. I went out and looked at GoToMeeting outages, and many people are reporting issues.
Oh, thank you, Linda.
You're
That makes me
welcome.
feel a lot better.
Timing.
Yeah, apparently it works on phones, but not on PCs, quote unquote.
All right. Well, thanks very much. It's a brave new world, right? Now we have to deal with GoToMeeting outages, not just traffic flow problems.
These apps give us an example of what we're going to hit with real fire apps later.
And on that positive note.
All right. There we go. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye. Bye.